Well, hello everybody. Pastor Randy here. Great to be with you today as we continue looking at the letters to the church in the book of Revelation. We've been going through these one by one, usually a lesson a week or so. And today we're going to look at the letter to the church of Sardis. Now, one of the things that we've been looking at is how this fits into modern times, how this is relevant in modern times, and what is the message? Well, again, the messaging has been very, very clear. All right, as we start back to the letter to Ephesus, how it all begins, because even regardless of where one is in their life when it comes to their spiritual walk, when it comes to their journey with Christ, whether believer, non-believer, whatever, okay, everything has a beginning. And that's one of the things that is a continual argument in the world today is where is that beginning? But even the scoffer and the skeptic that wrestle with the reality or the existence of God, if you will, really can never answer that question. Well, if that's not true, then where did it all start? And no one has the answer to that, except for those who have come to know Christ. And the reason that I can say that with clarity, with boldness, with confidence, not arrogance, but confidence, is the fact that Jesus says, I am the truth. And once we grasp that, and then we can begin to see systematically how all this comes to be. That is why Jesus says, follow me. That is a singular directive, and that is so important that we understand that. And so as we begin to systematically look at these letters to the church, there's several things that are important about that. Number one, the reason that it first and foremost goes to the church is that is the Lord's way of saying you are the example. You are the one that I have positioned for everyone else, the world in totality, to look to for the answers, because you represent me. And if you're not doing a good job with that, then that's where we have a disconnect. That's where we have a problem. Because again, if our call, if our desire is for others to follow the Lord, if our others are for people to get saved, we can use all the different church analogies and words we want to. That responsibility falls on us. Now, I realize there are some others that teach differently and that you have nothing to do with it and that it's only by God's design. No. Scripture's clear, okay? We get to say yes or no. And the reason that I can say that again with confidence is these letters. Because if we go back to Ephesus where we started, and God says, you left your first love. That word alone says, I have a say. If God has pre-programmed, if God has put it all into play, then I don't get to do that. I don't have a choice in that. If indeed I have been predetermined, pre-whatever, that some of these, no, I shouldn't say all, but some of these people teach that, well, that's not going to happen because God's already decreed it. It can't. Well, that's not true. Because if I have the ability to leave something, then I've got say, right? And that's just common sense, all right? So we start there. Ephesus begins the other in the beginning, all right? So that's really the third in the beginning in the Bible. We have Genesis, we have John chapter 1, and here we have Revelation, the letters to the church. And the reason I can say in the beginning is, how did it start? How do we get to where we are right now in 2024? How do we eventually evolve, continually change to get to where we are right now? There's got to be a beginning, okay? And the beginning was leaving the first love. And the first love for the church should be the foundation of the church, which is Jesus, right? And so we get to the letter to Sardis, chapter 3, verse 1. And Jesus says to John, write this letter, write to Sardis, to the angel of the church. Again, we've talked about that. Each letter, that is the pastor, that is the messenger, if you go to the church. The one holding the seven spirits of God in one hand. That goes back to the letter of Ephesus. We see the continual and commonality of the description of Jesus, right? He is the one. The one. And so we can go back again to his proclamation in the book of John of being the door, the life, the bread of life, the light of the world, the way, the truth, the life, the only way. He says, no one comes into the Father but by me. So he clearly has the authority. He clearly has the ability to be the one addressing his church. So we see here, he is the one, the Spirit of God in one hand, a firm grip on the seven stars with the other. I hold it all. That's what he's saying. I'm the one. That's not an arrogant thing. Again, we have to understand, who are we talking about? We are talking about God. That is so clear as we read through this. He says in verse 2, or actually a continuation of verse 1, he says, I see right through your work. Now, let's just stop right there. What is he saying? I see through your work. This again goes back to the beginning. He says, I see your heart. In other words, I know whether you mean it or not. This goes on. He says, you have a reputation for vigor and zest. Everybody sees what you're doing. It's visible. It's lively. It's vigorous and all these other things. And it's attention grabbing. You know, it's the big bold flag that flies outside, and it's all the bells and the whistles and all the different things. It is a marketing thing. It is I'm making a name for myself. It's all these different things that go on that we see in the modern world today. And he says, you have a reputation for that. Everybody knows who you are. Everybody knows what you're doing, and it's vigorous and it's zestful and all these different things. But you're dead. Stone dead. You don't mean it. It's just like he would say in others. In fact, in the last letter that we talked about, he says, you're in the God business. Friends, this is a sad state. It's a sad statement, because what we find is that's as real now as real could possibly be. I know that sounds judgmental on one side, and I realize that sounds certainly condemning on one side and looking at, but it's not meant to stereotype. It's not meant to single any one particular entity out or place out. Again, I'm not one that says everybody on TV is a charlatan. I don't believe that. Many show themselves to not be real. It's oftentimes all these great things are being said, and then it's rounded about with buy my book and you can hear the rest. That's real. That's God business. But as a pastor, we also see that on the local market as well. And again, that's not to be critical in the sense of, oh, they don't teach this or they don't teach that or that. It's not about getting into someone's belief system or their whatever their foundational statements are. But what we find is oftentimes movements start. Okay? And again, oftentimes one of the things that I think that's important in this study is to just say things that need to be said. And again, it's not to be critical, and it's certainly not to be shock value. But I'll give you an example. Probably 20 years ago, I guess it's been that long. I know it's been at least that long, maybe a little bit longer. Purpose-driven life came out. It changed the course of the church, especially here in the Western world, and especially here in America. Everybody bought that book. Every church bought the study. Every church bought it hook, line, and sinker without ever really looking about what it was all about. Were there good things in there? Were there true statements in there? Certainly. But it was an agenda. And again, I don't say that to be critical, but you got to understand the things behind stuff. Here he says, you've got a reputation for vigor. You're all out there, man. You're in front of it. You got a reputation for zest. Everybody sees it, man. Your zeal is absolutely noticeable. Everybody can see it. It's not a question. But you're dead. Stone dead. Your heart's not in it. It's a business. It's how do I become notable? Because it's not about me. It's about him. The church is founded on him. And so here's the thing. When we lose our way, when we leave that first love, then our foundational documents, our statements, our belief systems, our everything is no longer resting on the foundation, but rather the one that is getting all the attention. That's what he's saying here, is we have to go back to the beginning. We have to go back to the letter to Ephesus, is you've left your first love. And if you don't come back, and again, we get back to that, you have a say. You have a choice. Here we see in just this very first verse of chapter 3, you've got the reputation. You're doing the work. Everybody can see it, okay? And you're drawing them in by the masses on Sunday morning and all the other things that you're doing. But it's not real. It's not real. We live in a great world of deception today. I mean, the majority of what we see, especially what is shown to us, it's not real. Okay? I was in and out and involved in the professional wrestling world for a very long time. Okay? Both as actually in the industry and certainly as a fan for a long time. It's not real, okay? The brutality, the punishment to the body, that's very real. I suffer from that today because of injuries. But the show, the story, it's not real, okay? And that's not to be an exposer of anything, but we all know that. That's not a new revelation. A lot of the things that we see today that are perceived to be real, reality TV, the news, all this, it's not real because it's filled with deception. There is an element of reality because you see physical people and you see action taking place or acting taking place, and oftentimes, but it's not real. Jesus here is saying very, very clearly the church has become non-exempt from that because oftentimes what you see is a show. And that sounds awful, but we have to go back to Ephesus. He said, you've left your first love. And so if I'm not there, you can't see me. Does that make sense? This is what he's saying here. He says, I see right through your work. You've got the reputation for vigor and zeal, but you're dead. Your heart is what he's speaking of. It's not filled with me. The reasons you're doing this is not because of me. It's now become because of you. And the more popular that you can get, or the more books you can sell, or the more CDs or DVDs or whatever that you can sell, the more people that you can get in, and the more resources and funding that you get in. We can get into all of that as to how that lines up biblically. Others teach differently. We all fall in the different categories. But if we go back to what Jesus is saying, he provides for everything that we need. We don't have to beg anybody for anything. And so we find clarity in this beautiful letter. So he says in verse 2, up on your feet. Take a deep breath. So he's saying, all right, let's take a pause. I'm telling you, I know. But I'm also telling you, we can make this right. We can fix this. Get up. Let's take a deep breath. Maybe there's life in you yet. So there's still hope. I'm not giving up on you. So although I know what you're doing and I know who you are and I know everything about you, because again, we know that God knows all things, right? He's saying maybe there's still a chance, not because I'm giving up on you, but I'm going to give you the chance to respond to the truth. Now, what you do with it, that's on you. But I'm letting you know that I know. That's important. but I wouldn't know it by looking at your busy work. I'm looking at what you're doing, but it's what you're doing. It's not for me. It's for you. Friends, this is a powerful letter that is so relevant right now. It's unbelievable. He says, up on your feet, take a deep breath. Maybe there's life in you yet, but I wouldn't know it by looking at your busy work. Nothing of God's work has been completed. So that's what's on the marquee. That's what's on the sign. That's what's on all the printed material. But it's not real. This is harsh. Okay? Not because it's ugly in the wording, not because it's vulgar or anything like that, because it's true. And if we begin to, as we go back to verse 1, I see right through it. If we begin to look at this through the realistic lens of what Jesus is saying here, we can see it too. If we will open our eyes and allow our ears to hear what is being said. He said, your condition is desperate. Okay, when something is desperate, it's holding on out of desperation, as if I don't know if I'm going to make it. I am desperate. And when one is desperate, they often do desperate things, which sometimes are not good things. Sometimes are not helpful things, because it's an act of desperation. Therefore, I'll take anything. I'll do anything. And oftentimes in our world today, we hear that phrase, I'll do anything for that. Who else hears that? The enemy himself. Really? Let's see just how much you mean that. I once had someone tell me, whatever it takes to fill our auditorium, that's what we'll do. Here we read that. Here we find this relevant in 2024 to the church. We're not talking about the world here. Jesus is talking to his church. So he says, your condition is desperate. Think of the gift you once had in your hands, past tense, once had in your hands, the message that you heard with your ears. Grasp it again and turn back to God. We're going to read that again. Think of the gift you once had in your hands. So you held the truth because he is the truth. And he said, I gave that to you. That's yours. I gave that to you. You held the message in your hands. You heard it with your ears. It's never been held back from you. It's never been. I heard someone teaching recently that says God intentionally blinds people and deafens people to his word because he doesn't want them to be saved. Friends, that's blasphemy. Because the message here is very, very clear. God says, I desire that none should perish. And if that is true, if that is the desire of God, but yet still he makes you not be able to hear it, then God contradicts himself. And we know that that's not true. So those type of things, I encourage you, don't listen to that stuff. And I don't say that because I think I'm the only one that's right. I don't say that at all, because that would be arrogant and prideful, and God does not go along with that either. But think about what he's saying here. Listen to these words. Your condition is desperate. I'm looking upon you, and there's very little left. We go back to where he says, maybe there's life left. But I wouldn't see it. I can't see it by the way that you're doing things. Think of what you had. You had the truth. You had me. But if we go back to Ephesus, you left me. And so far, we see no one's come back. And in Ephesus, he says, if you don't come back, I'm going to take something away from you. I'm going to take away your usefulness. You may be there. You may have the lights on, and you may have the bright flashing sign, and you may have all the everything, but you won't have me. Here we see that coming to truth. We see that coming to be. And he says, you had it. Grasp it again. In other words, I'm giving you another chance. I'm going to throw you the ball one more time. You had it in your hands, but you dropped it. Okay, you didn't complete the play. You didn't make it to the end zone. But let's go again. We're going back to the 30-yard line, and we're going to try this one more time. I'm going to throw it to you again. Grasp it again and turn back to God. This was his plea in Ephesus. If you don't return to me, you left me, come back. Because if you come back, we can make this thing work. This is what he's saying here. Grasp it again and turn back to God. If you pull the covers back over your head and sleep on, oblivious to God, if is such a pivotal word within Scripture, because it always precedes a condition or a result. Here's no different, right? If you pull the covers back. All right, so if you decide that you're not going to listen, if you decide you're going to continue on in your way and you're going to ignore what I'm trying to tell you, if you're going to continue to just say, you know what, I'm going to do it my way. I'm not coming back because this way is working for me. God says here, if you continue, if you pull the covers over your head, if you continue to sleep on is ignoring. All right. Sleep on is, I know I need to get up. I know the alarm's going off, but I'm going to keep hitting the snooze because I'm not ready to get up. But verse 2 said, up on your feet, it's time to go. The alarm is sounding, it's time to go. This is a message of importance. Not because it's just you, but because you affect others. This is the message to the church today. He's saying, if you continue to sleep on, oblivious to God, that is ignoring. That is not because we don't know that he's there. And that is the world in which we live in right now. It is those who claim an ignorance, those who claim a non-believer, that's foolishness because it is an oblivious nature of, I know it's there, but I'm just going to ignore it. It's like if you were in the mountains and you know, not just because you think, you can hear it, you can smell it, you can, all the different things that a massive bear is outside of your door. Okay, well, I'm just going to ignore it. I'm not going to pay any attention to this out there. But the day comes that you can no longer stay in the cabin or in the house because you've got to go to the car to go get supplies because now you're out. Eventually, you're going to come to the reality that that bear is not only there, it didn't go away, and it's waiting on you on the other side of that door. So you can try to be oblivious to it. I'm going to ignore it for as long as you want to, but there will come a day you will face that bear. This is exactly what God is saying here. If you continue to pull the covers over your head, if you continue to sleep on, oblivious to God, I'll return when you least expect it. That's not a threat. That's a fact. Okay? John tells us very, very clearly. Jesus says, if I go and prepare you a place, I will return. Okay? That is clear. Very, very clear. Now, all the date setters, all the prognosticators are wrong. And I don't care who they are. Okay? I don't care how important they are. I don't care how long they've been on TV or how many books they've written or how notable they are. Doesn't matter. How old they are, it doesn't matter. They are wrong. And I would say that to them. Respectfully, but I would say that to them. Not because I know everything or that I'm anybody important, but Scripture says that. It says no one knows the day. And again, I just heard a very prominent person just make that statement within the last couple of days, how much time we've got left. It's just not true. We see here, though, he says, if you keep on and you continue to ignore me, I will show up. And when I do, you won't be ready. Because we go back to you'll be busy. You'll be about the busy work. Your busy work, not mine. because you've forgotten me. You've left me. You've gotten so enamored with you and building your kingdom, you've forgotten you represent my kingdom. Friends, this is incredible when we begin to look at it this way. So we see here it says, I'll return when you least expect it and break into your life like a thief in the night. There's other parts of earlier scriptures here in the Gospels that talk about the return of Christ being like a thief in the night. What is that speaking of? Okay, maybe not everyone gets this for clarity, but I served for 13 years in law enforcement, all right? The thief, and I can assure you of this because I have worked a multitude of break-ins, thieveries, and all these other things. They don't announce their arrival, okay? They don't call you and say, hey, about 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to stop by and pick up a few things. Just letting you know I'm coming by. No, that's not how that works, okay? The thief in the night plans, they scheme, they determine, they give it some thought before they go do it, right? Of where's the target, how easy is it to get in, and even more so, how easy is it to get out? What am I preparing myself for as I enter this property that I don't have any reason to go in because it's not mine, but I'm going to go in there, retrieve and take things that are there, whatever they may be. Am I prepared to do whatever is necessary when I get there? Am I going to be confronted by the homeowner? Whatever. We could go on and on with the criminal scenario. Why this is important about the thief in the night, it's not about Jesus coming in and stealing something, all right? It's about him saying, when I show up, you won't be ready. If you're asleep this morning, whenever you hear this or any other time, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 o'clock in the morning, it doesn't matter. If you are within the confines of your home, captured by whatever it is that you're doing, okay? And it could be watching TV, it could be cooking dinner, it could be taking a nap or dead asleep. You're not prepared for an intruder to come into your home and confront you. You're not prepared for that because it wasn't on your mind. Okay? So we're not talking about a physical confrontation as far as a fight or fighting back or fighting for your life or whatever, as much as not being prepared for that one that showed up that you didn't know was coming. But Jesus did tell us he was coming, and he's saying it here again. And when I come, you won't be ready because you were too busy worried about you. Are we supposed to just ignore ourselves? No. Are we supposed to just be completely oblivious to who we are? No. But we need to be mindful of who we are, and this is why he's talking to the church. We are his. Therefore, we are to be about his work. And what is that? Showing other people Christ. This is why he brings it back around in verse 4. You still have a few followers of Jesus in Sardis who haven't ruined themselves. So there's still a few. And friends, if there's a remnant, if there's still a few, then there's still life. If there's still breath in this old body, there's still life. If there's still a beat in this old heart, there's still life. Therefore, we go after it. We pursue it. We engage it. We do everything we can to keep it sustained and keep it going. He says, you've still got a few who haven't ruined themselves, wallowing in the muck of the world's ways. Friends, we have seen, and we're looking at specifically at the church, we have seen the splintering of the church over the last 4 years. 4 years, okay? Not just the last 50 years, all right? The last 4 years, in particular because of politics. Politics. The world's ways. Who's going to be in charge? Who's going to do us right? Who's going to do us wrong? Who's lying? Who's cheating? Who's stealing? They all are. They all are. Because that's how people get in power. Are there a few good ones here and there? Sure. But deception is the key to getting in those places, friends. wallowing in the muck of the world's ways. When we think of those words, wallowing, that's lying down with, that's getting in bed with, that's laying down in the mud with, in the muck. That's staining, that's saturating, that's causing a smell of the world's ways. We've seen that division within the church in just the last 4 years between politics, between world economic issues, between, viral issues and, claims of different things and all these sicknesses and shutdowns and all this stuff. It has absolutely changed the course of what we do. And it has changed the course of what is being paid attention to. And that is by design, not just in the world's ways, that is designed by the principalities of the world that is led by the prince of this world, which is the enemy himself. He's saying here, you fell for it. But there's a few of you who haven't. This is important. He says, they will walk with me on parade. They will be the conquerors. They will be the ones to hold on. They have proved their worth. In other words, they didn't leave me. They held on in spite of the world. They held on in spite of the deception and the lies. Why? Because they listened to me. They followed me and not the world. Verse 5, conquerors will march in the victory parade. There's a day coming, friends. There's a day coming in the victory parade. He says, their names indelible in the book of life. They will never be removed. They are mine. They are mine. That is so important. That is so important that we realize how we get there, how we got here, and the fact that there's still hope. This is the word that Jesus is giving to the church. There's still hope. Turn it around. There's time. Turn it around. Listen to me. He says their names will be indelible in the book of life. I'll lead them up and I will present them by name to my Father and his angels. Do you realize that today, friends? God knows your name. And he knows where it's at. We're either with him or we're not. We're either in the world's ways or we're in his ways. There's no gray area there, friends. What are we trusting in? And I say we, I'm speaking to the individual, and I am absolutely speaking to the church. This lesson, the letter to Sardis, it is so clear what the messaging here is and how we get here and how we come out on the other side of that. It's absolutely, entirely, 100% our choice. He says so right here. If you continue to stay where you are, this is how it's going to end. If you will listen to me, we change the world. It's just that simple. He says in verse 6, as all these letters end, are your ears awake? Listen. Listen. What is he saying in that? I've given you everything that you need. You have every tool available at your disposal. You can do this, but I'm not going to make you. It's up to you. It's up to you. It is like preparing all the components that you need for a meal, and you give it to the person that has the ability to cook, that has the ability to turn the stove on and heat up all the different things. Here's everything that you need for that meal. But I'm not going to cook it for you. I'm going to give you everything that you need to do it. But it's up to you. You can cook it and sustain yourself, nourish yourself, take care of yourself, or you can stay on the couch and be hungry. That's up to you. I'm not going to make you do it. I'm going to give you everything that you need to do it. He says, are your ears awake? Listen. Listen to the wind words, the Spirit blowing through the church. Friends, this message, I pray, will reach a heart today, because this is what the church needs to hear today. more than we've ever thought about. And even as I'm teaching this to you today, as I'm reading, I'm teaching myself as well. The messaging here is so powerful. It is so incredible if we'll look at what is being said here. I pray that our heart has been touched today. I pray that whoever's listening to this will be empowered and will be encouraged that there is still hope. Are your ears awake? Listen. God bless you, friends. We'll be back with the letter to Philadelphia next week. Take care.